cars that have had their roofs removed used to be sneered at by car enthusiasts, because the transition from coupe to cabrio would often add weight, remove stiffness, and dent the driving experience. Nowadays though, companies like Porsche and Aston Martin work just as hard to get their cabrios right as they do their coupes. And the new V12 Vantage S Roadster and 911 Turbo S Cabriolet that you see here are without question two of the greatest examples they've yet produced. But despite costing almost exactly the same as one another, the V12 Roadster and Turbo S Cabriolet could hardly be more different from each other on the road or in the showroom. And here's why. The Aston is powered by an old school thumper of a 6-litre V12 that produces 565 of the best sounding bhp you will ever listen to. Its rear wheel drive weighs a fair bit more than the Porsche and uses what Aston describes as a contemporary 7-speed automatic gearbox, which in practice is nothing of the sort. The 911, on the other hand, is far more clinical technically and seems a lot more efficient as a result. Its 3.8 litre twin-turbo flat 6 produces a touch less power at 552 bhp, but has much more torque and burns a lot less fuel into the bargain. It's also 4-wheel drive and has a super fast dual-clutch gearbox that makes the Aston's transmission feel even more old-fashioned than it actually is. The thing about the Aston, it is fast. It's really powerful, really fast, and on paper is a complete hot rod of a car, but actually when you get in it and you look at this just completely beautiful interior that even with the roof off smells just pungent. It smells expensive. It feels expensive because it is expensive, but you get in it and you don't feel like going for an absolute rag in it. It's just kind of luxuriant and calm and relaxed. But when you do start to up the pace in it a bit, it does respond really rather well. There are things it doesn't do particularly brilliantly, like change gear. The gearbox feels completely from another era compared with, say, the Porsche's PDK, but it's got delicious steering, the Aston. Lovely feel from the rear axle. Lovely feel everywhere, and just the most brilliant soundtrack. I mean, have a listen to this. Second gear. That is just incredible. You would never ever get tired of listening to that noise. To make the Aston really come alive though, you do need to press the sport button. It makes the gear changes a bit quicker, sharpens up the throttle response a bit. The whole car just feels a little bit more alert. Get a few more revs before it wants to upshift as well, and you have to upshift manually. Just the most fantastic sound. It downshifts really nicely. It's just the upshifts that are a bit slow. But do you know what? I don't really care that the Aston gets completely mauled by the Porsche dynamically, because this thing may cost the thick end of $1 million, but it also feels it. Every inch of this car feels expensive and just ruddy marvellous. I absolutely love the V12 Roadster, and I don't care that it does all sorts of things not very well, because the main thing it does well, it does brilliantly, and that is how it makes you feel when you're sat here behind the wheel.
911 Turbo S really is just a complete weapon of a car. It doesn't have just as much power as the Aston, but it's got about 20% more torque, and it's also got not far off 20% less weight to carry around. So even though it carries that weight around in completely the wrong place in theory, i.e. over the back axle, it doesn't matter. Because when you put your foot down in this thing, it really takes off. It is a mentally fast car, the Turbo S convertible. But it's also just, it's really well sorted to drive. It's so much better than 911 turbo convertibles of old, and it's kind of partly to do with the engine mounts. You get hydraulic engine mounts in the S model as standard, but it's just sorted, this thing. It really is. It kind of doesn't matter that you haven't got a roof, although it's quite nice when the sun's out, of course. But I mean, dynamically, it doesn't really matter that there isn't a roof, because I kind of defy anyone to tell the difference between this and the fixed head, between how it goes down the road, what it does when you go down the road, the steering, the brakes, the body control, the lot. It just feels like a coupe Turbo S, and that means it feels absolutely sensational. Brilliant gearbox, PDK whether you like it or not, and the way it just shift gears up or down, any revs, any engine speed, it's just an immense gearbox in this car. And it makes the Aston's gearbox feel really, really old-fashioned and just not very good. And the torque this thing's got, I think it's 553 pounds-feet at about 2,000 revs. I mean, that is just insane. No, it is not as charming a car, anything like, to sit in as the Aston Martin. But if you want the faster of the two cars, there is no debate whatsoever. The Turbo S mullers the Aston dynamically.
There's no doubt that the Porsche can do things to a road like this that the Aston can't even contemplate. But there's just something about the slower, heavier, not as efficient, nowhere near as technically brilliant Aston that in the end is hard to resist. The noise it makes is almost enough on its own to justify a victory here. And then there's the way it looks, the way it steers, the way it makes you feel when you're behind the wheel. And the thing to remember is, they won't be making cars like this in 10 years' time. So it kind of feels like we should be enjoying the Aston Martin's charms whilst they're still around. And if a car like the V12 Vantage S Roadster already feels too old-fashioned for you, then the Turbo S is probably the perfect alternative. Either way, you won't be disappointed. That much I can just about guarantee.